Welcome to the LaunchFamily Podcast, where we have honest conversations that help parents feel less alone and more supported. I'm your host, Jessica Shelley, a former teacher, mom of 7, and co-founder of LaunchFamily. And today's conversation is especially meaningful. We're talking about burnout, resilience, healing, and what it really means to lead at home, at work, and in your own life. Our guest is Amy Looper, trauma and resiliency coach, keynote speaker, and the author of Leading Motherhood. Amy works with women navigating burnout, emotional abuse recovery, and major life transitions, often while still raising kids and carrying enormous responsibility. Amy, I am so glad to have you here today with us. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Jessica. Great to be here.
Yeah. So for moms that are meeting you for the first time, can you give us a little bit of context about your background and what pulled you into this work?
So Amy Looper, I founded Resilient Growth about 6 years ago. I was in corporate sales for well over 18 years before that, and just juggling all the things. I can remember being at that time in sales, we were just running from like dropping the kids off at daycare to catching a lift. We were able to expense lifts at the company I was driving or that I was working for to get all this stuff done throughout the day, and then racing back to get the kids at 5:30. And there was just a point in time where I was like, wow, even though I'm exceeding expectations at work, what am I doing? I just felt like that tenseness and just never feeling I could turn the off button on and relax. And so I exited corporate at that time when my kids were little. And then I started to do some consulting, which turned into some coaching, which turned into some really specific niche focus in helping people heal from complex trauma. So it was definitely a path that was, came from out of really pain to purpose kind of business, and out of a journey where I was trying to seek my own answers and trying to figure out what was happening in life. So here we are, and we've been able to serve women across the globe.
Amazing. And you work specifically at the intersection of like professional moms or professionals and moms, I should say. Those are the two intersections there. And then
Yeah.
I guess like the question would be why did you decide on that? Like why not any other kind of demographic for moms?
Hmm. Because I think juggling both, there's just a personality type where we're ambitious. We have that high performer in us. We are drivers. We like to create. We like to push limits. And, sometimes that comes at our own health detriment. And so I saw this pattern in my own life and then others around me. We were all kind of doing the same thing. And it was like we see often that we lose our identity in that. We start to have this identity attached to the doing and the achievement. And then we go through these things like having kids, and it forces us in these big life transitions to kind of really reevaluate. So that's kind of where it started. And then now I coach women in many different stages. Motherhood is one of them. But also when people are becoming empty nesters, it's really interesting. Some of these big peak moments in time where people are going through massive transition, it just kind of forces us to look in the mirror.
Thank you for clarifying that too. Like I think maybe I just zoned in on professional and mom because that's the life stage that I'm at right now.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, well, no, you do much more than that. So yeah. And you mentioned the transition pieces, right? So like when a professional becomes a mom or maybe the empty nester, you've
Yeah.
personally used your own journey and you've walked through some very profound life events. How have those really shaped your approach to how you support women?
I bring in multiple modalities into what we do for individuals. There's a million people out there that can coach business and leadership, and there's not a shortage of mindset gurus out there, right? But when it comes to solving some complex trauma issues, when that's the root, I'd like to get to the root cause. I don't like to put band-aids on things because that's not going to get you anywhere. But if we can get to the root cause of why someone is, feeling off or unhappy, or their body is telling them something, right? That you might go through things like physical chronic pain, inflammation. Signs of burnout are not just I need a vacation. Signs of real burnout are your stress responses in your body. So I got real deep with studying all of this as I went through things like birth trauma, recovering from a very toxic relationship. It was a 17-year marriage, and that brought a hugest healing journey of my entire life. Having to overcome complex PTSD through a number of things. And so getting to the root cause, I had to really peel back the onion layers. So we do things a little bit differently. We start with a bottom-up approach, getting the body to feel safe. And then we get into a place where then we feel like, okay, I'm in a good, stable spot. Now I can start to dream again. Now I can step into my vision. Now I can figure out those things where I can start to move forward. And that helps people build capacity and agency as they thrive after these big transitions.
I love that you bring it into perspective too, of like we have to kind of start at the root versus like, oh yeah, well, I have this dream, I'm gonna go build this business. I know that I've got some things that I want to work on, but put it off. I feel like that's like the mom mentality is like, oh, I will come last on the to-do list.
Yeah.
But really we have to kind of come first in order to make sure that we can show up for our kids and how that all kind of goes within our career as well. Um, and you had mentioned some specific types of complex trauma that you've worked through specifically, but for listeners that are listening in right now, is there any like things that might happen within their physical body, their nervous system that would be like, oh, well, maybe I should think about how this is actually affecting me because I thought that it was just going to go away.
A lot of times we're talking to women in midlife. And so you might think even some of the perimenopause kind of
Oh,
symptoms, hormonal imbalances, brain fog, inflammation. Maybe you've seen your weight dramatically go one way or the other. Sometimes it's weight gain, but sometimes it's also weight loss rapidly. It could be even a thing like hormonal imbalances will cause things like cysts and fibroids and different things. So while I'm not a doctor, I'm not going to be your OBGYN, these things will present in the body where um, those things may be related to the greater issue in your environment. So we really have to look at, okay, what is your environment like? Sometimes you're in stress at work and at home. That was my case for many, many, many years. And so when your body isn't able to really turn off the stress response, it will start to cause some of these issues. Other things that people have reported have been, just like chronic headaches and pain, like physical symptoms like that, inability to focus, or they just see a really big pattern of procrastination, or they have this inability to make decisions, things like that. They're putting everybody else first, right? The people pleaser stuff comes up in behavior. But at the core, it could be oftentimes we have to do some reparenting coaching as well. Like, as we, as we, um, as we build families and parent ourselves, it oftentimes brings us to these points where we have to reflect on our past and what do we want to bring forward? What do we not? But then also, it may bring up things where you're like, oh, I never really felt safe in those moments. Or maybe you've been in a situation where your body's never really felt safe for whatever reason. It could be a nervous system thing. So that's why I really work on the nervous system first, especially in this generation where we're living in a world that's in constant uncertainty and flux. Our nervous systems are constantly threat detecting and never turning off, unfortunately. So we have to be very intentional about the ways that we can provide its safety and rest.
yeah. Any, I guess like on that note, any sort of like top of mind strategies or tips or how do you kind of coach through that?
Yeah, I think starting your first 7 minutes of your day is a great, great habit to be consistent. The more consistent and disciplined you can be, I always tell people the higher performance you go, the more boring life is going to get. And the reason why is because, like, for those of us who might think, oh, I thrive in chaos. Sometimes that's actually not the case that we're thriving in chaos, but we're seeking chaos because we're used to things being chaotic around us. And in
Mm.
which case, we're creating more and more things that are just leading us to burnout, not true results that we want to see. And the results that you might want to see might be business results, but it might also be like just a thriving family and connection with your family. But you might find yourself at 5 o'clock pouring a glass of wine and scrolling social media because you just need a break, you know? So these are the real life things that we work through. But, first 7 minutes of your day, making sure that you start out not by scrolling on your phone, not checking email, not just getting, right up in bed and having a cup of coffee on an empty stomach. We don't want to do that. We want to intentionally, connect with ourselves emotionally. Maybe we want to get up and journal or set intentions for the day. Spiritually, I'm a big proponent for, growing spiritually and bringing that into our lives to help us lead, whatever you align to there. And then physically, like get up, move your body, get a workout in, but make sure nutritionally you're focused on high protein, water, and that first hour of the day so that you can allow your body to get fueled in the right way and not go into complete stress. Because what people don't realize is if you just get up and go have the cup of coffee and you scroll the news, guess what you're doing? The coffee is stimulating more stress hormones, and the news feed is going right into your eyeballs, and that threat detection is automatically turned on.
That's like such a clear picture, but I I know many mornings where I start my day like that. I'm like, I just got to get a little bit in before the kids get up, like
Right.
figure things out, get a head start. But really, I love that you bring that in of like kind of setting and being intentional about what that looks like and how that really sets up like the tone for the rest of your day.
Yeah.
I want to talk about one other thing here that you also teach, which is called the five cornerstones of resilience.
Mhm.
So can you walk us through them? Tell us more about that.
Yeah, the five cornerstones of resilience are leading with courage, having a committed vision, so commitment, compassion, connection, and all of them really drive to confidence. Over the last few years, women have come to me saying, "Hey, like, what is the one thing you really want?" Right, and all of them across the board wanted to solve many problems, but at the end of the day, really wanted to just feel confident. They wanted to feel comfortable in their own skin. It was really a greater identity alignment. And so I started with the five cornerstones because we've got to break the pattern. If we're going to create different results, we have to interrupt the pattern, right? And so taking courageous action will trump fear and anxiety every single time. And when then we can start to have clarity, and clarity is that committed vision so that we can then communicate and build connections in a way with compassion. Compassion is such a big root. If you think of yourself as a tree, it's like, what are the roots below the tree? These are the roots. And this is what's going to bear fruit in influence, in confident leadership, in those ways that we really want to show up so that people see us as the great authority that we have in us, but then also, just as radiant leaders. And these are the roots that we have to really strengthen.
Oh my gosh, I love that visual too of like the fruit that is growing from the roots, right? Like we have
Yes.
to start there too. And again, like courageous action. Like it sounds so simple when you talk about how it can overcome the fear and anxiety, but then also it's so scary in the moment too of like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I want to do this. You
Yeah.
know? So I love
Yeah.
that framework. How have you noticed that emotional regulation or like some of these like maybe more soft skills, I think is the buzzword,
Yeah.
kind of affect our ability to be a quality leader?
I honestly think it's the center of everything. I mean, when we think about it, even just energetically, I mean, we can get real wooey on the subject of energy, but like if we're really attuning, our nervous systems are attuning to our environments. You walk into a brand new, that's why walk into a brand new workplace. Let's say you start a new job, you're feeling out the room, right? You're feeling out the company, the culture, how people are, and you're kind of like you're just kind of like there for a couple of weeks to just kind of get at the feel for everybody, right? So we're always attuning. You go to brunch with a new set of girlfriends. What are you doing? You're scoping out the room again. Like, do I fit with these people? Is there a sense of belonging and safety? Like all the psychological things, right? So so when that happens, we really have to be cognizant of how we're leading in our values and what we want to really bring to the table. And I think that's the opportunity there, in emotional regulation is, it's like we're staying strong in those roots that we talked about. And those roots have values and know where we're going and know who we really want to be with. And then, we can create those connected relationships. And this works in parenting too, by the way, because your kids are always attuning to your energy. If you're stressed out, they're going to be stressed out. If you're angry, they're going to be angry. They're picking it up.
So true. So true. And I'm going to come back to just like for the listeners listening in, like that morning when you are having your coffee and scrolling instead of like, foundational day, like maybe observe how that affects the day for your kids too. Because that is huge. Like, I think we talked about it on another podcast episode, but if you oversleep your alarm and then you're like stressed and frazzled and then they're like stressed and frazzled as they go into school
Yeah.
but they don't actually know why they should be stressed and frazzled. It's just like, oh, well, mom was like, telling us what to do and we didn't know where our
Yes.
shoes were. So I love that sort of like rootedness, the groundedness that you're talking about here. How does I guess like through this lens too, we've talked about like the professional context or like when you're with your
Mhm.
girlfriend and stuff, but how does leadership also show up differently for moms? Like within the household or in society as a whole?
Well, I think we are in a generation where we're called to lead way more than I think we're supposed to be called to lead, by the way. I just want to say that.
Amen to that one.
However,
Yeah.
however, the reality is that we are called to lead kind of 24/7. So you could look at that as like, oh my gosh, there's there's a spiral there you could really get into, but I want to keep you out of the spiral of feeling like you have to do it all because you don't. This just means that if you're in a situation where maybe you're leading a lot at home and you're leading at work, and I find many of us are in that spot. And some of you may be single parents. I'm a single parent now too. And so we have to lead like all the time. But that is an opportunity then to grow in strength of boundaries, what you really want to focus your time and energy on, because there are the same 24 hours in a day for everybody. But we really have to be intentional about how we're going to choose our contribution to that,
Mhm.
and what takes our time and energy, and then get better about the boundaries and delegation and all the things. But I think also like simple things like focusing on your deep breathing throughout the day will help you make those choices easier because you can slow your mind and body into connection with each other and then make those decisions from a place that's truly centered on what you truly want. Because if you think about it, as moms, you've got your kids, they're pulling your attention. If you have a boss pulling your attention, or your employees or shareholders, or you've got all this, a spouse or a partner or your friends, like family, you're being pulled. And so as moms, oftentimes we're taught from a very just in society and maybe with your families that we're supposed to overgive and be over responsible and hold everybody's emotional weight. Well, you do that, and guess what? You're going to end up in my office talking about burnout. Because you just can't
Yeah.
hold it all. You
Yeah.
just can't. So we have to release some of that. But I think that's what makes us a better leader is, yeah, we're given the challenge, but when we navigate through it, we become sharper. We become more decisive, and really being able to act with quickness and be very steadfast in that.
Yeah, I think one of the words that was like blaring in my mind as you're saying that, I'm like, Grace, 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 we need to have grace too. Like, because it
Yes.
is like, oh my gosh, I call myself a recovering perfectionist because like I'm
Yeah.
very type A. I like things in order. Processes
Yes.
are my best friend. But at the same time, like I have 7 children and I'm, building a business. And so it's like, there are going to be things that go off the rail every single day. But there's also grace in that of like, okay, yeah, well, that didn't work today. Let's try something new tomorrow. And like, that doesn't mean I'm a bad mom. That doesn't mean I'm a bad
No.
boss, a bad leader, or whatever,
Yeah.
shame spiral that you try to attach to whatever that failure might be. That's a learning moment,
Yes.
right? There's the teacher part.
Yes.
It's learning, not failure.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
but why do you think I want to talk about grace too in this moment here, but like why do you think that grace is something that we often overlook as women? Or what is like why is that a missing piece that we sometimes just forget to, oh yeah, we can take a minute for ourselves and, have a little bit of compassion for our individual person.
I figure right now because I grew up and my mom used to always say, Amy, just put a little grace into your life.
Like a seasoning. Like,
It was a life
balance
that,
it.
yeah.
I love
So
that.
it's funny because it's now coming full circle in your question. I love it. And so I think, I think what's so important with that, it helps us type A perfectionist firstborn children,
Oh,
you
you just
know?
described me. Yep, that was me.
Yeah. Well, that's the whole type. It's a thing,
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
but we have to come back down and humanize ourselves.
Mhm.
Like sometimes we have to take off the superhero cape that we have this illusion is on our back. We don't have to carry that. And I think Grace says, just come in and humanize it. I mean, even as like the emotional regulation coach and trainer, right? I go into companies and train people too outside of coaching. Like this last year, I became dysregulated. I was in nervous system dysregulation after massive life trauma.
Mhm.
And so it's like I had to co-regulate with my kids several times. I'd catch myself. The difference is I would know I was going down this rabbit hole of like, oh man, I just can't take anymore. And literally my body was shaking because I was going through massive things in a divorce and I couldn't take anymore. And it was like, my body's like, we have to give up. My mind is like, no, we have to get it right as a mom, right? We have to do all the things and make everything perfect because life isn't perfect, but we try to overcompensate, right? But I catch myself in that and I say, okay, girls, I have two girls. I said, Mommy just needs a break. I literally cannot go any further. I need 20, 30 minutes. I need to lay down for a minute. And I would go and focus on the deep breathing. I would just have everybody just pause life for a hot second. Let me get my stuff together. And then I'd
Yes.
come back in versus stepping in it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I think that I feel like any mom who's listening in could be like, oh yeah, no, I definitely know those moments.
Yeah. Yeah.
When you just hit that wall and you're like, I don't know how anything is going to be productive going forward.
Yeah.
So I love
Yeah.
like the grace of like giving yourself the time. Like it's okay to rest. The downtime is healthy, right? Like you need that to be able to unplug. One of the things that really stood out when we initially connected was that, you're an entrepreneur. And so you're building your brand, your business. What has that journey look like for you as a mom? So specifically, like if listeners are listening in and they're like, oh, I have this really good idea. I want to go pursue this, but might be
Yeah.
hesitant. What would you also
Yeah.
say to them in that?
Oh my gosh, go for it. It is the best journey ever. And I mean, I even stayed an entrepreneur after becoming a single mom and was that like white knuckling scary? um and now I'm just I think addicted to it because it's like so great to bet on yourself. When you bet on yourself, ladies, I mean, bet on yourself. Bet the farm on yourself. Like, really go all in. If you need to go get a coach, you don't need to go do this. You need to put capital in your business. You need to like up level your skill set. You got to go. We do wild things. We're entrepreneurs, right? Like I've been bootstrapping for 6 years. It's all my own cash. It's a service-based business. And so it's like you have to really make that investment, but then you start making these bets and you're like, okay, let's go 10x. Then you do a little bit more. Okay, let's go another 10x. So the growth from that is more than any job will give you. Now, can you take these skill sets back into a job? 100%. Is there the right or wrong way? No, you can do either. And there's an integration and sometimes you do both and all of that. But like just the growth of just saying yes is huge.
I think that word courage is like popping up again in my mind of like,
Yep.
oh yeah, just say yes. Like, okay, you're gonna have 100 million reasons why you should not do it. But like believe in yourself for this one reason of like you
Yes.
can do this. And there's so
Yeah.
many other moms. There's great communities out there to lean into, great coaches
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
can support you along the way as well. So definitely encourage it as a fellow mom entrepreneur
Yeah.
in all of the stages of how it gets crazy. But
Yeah.
um Yeah. And then I want to talk like this that before we kind of like wrap up.
Mhm.
Really kind of coming back to this thing because we kind of glossed over it, but burnout. So how does burnout overlap with like emotional abuse recovery or, some of these like complex trauma things that you have going on? Because as you mentioned, they
Yeah.
are both very intense. And what if
Mhm.
they're happening at the same time or what kind of encouragement can you provide in that?
Lived through that, came out
Yeah.
the other end, still coming out the other end, I'll be
There's
honest.
hope. There's hope.
So
Yeah.
so the overarching umbrella is burnout, right? Burnout can be caused from so many different things. I mean, like a toxic boss, just really running on fumes and trying to be the perfectionist, to these environmental things, which could be toxic relationship, right? Under the toxic relationship umbrella, there might be things, and I hope there's not out for those of you listening. I hope you're not going through this, but the reality is many are. Emotional abuse. There could be personality disorder things that people have to deal with. Like there's just so much, right? And so that's how it will show up as feeling burned out. And when we again get to the root cause, we peel back the onion layers and figure out what is really the source of stress. And that's different for absolutely everyone. Um, but yeah, if you're going through that, I want to give you hope that this is not going to be your forever. Does it feel like a cancer? 100%. And I wish there was a label for it to validate your experience, because the worst part about it all is you're invalidated so much by the other person that doesn't take accountability, by society, by just you really stand alone. There's a wilderness season there between you and your creator, but you're going to make it through, because that season is such an important incubation season that it's going to, and I'm getting chills just even talking about this. This is so good. So it really launches you, to this next level of your true calling and true purpose. It's just a season where you're being shown what's not okay and growing, your boundaries and identifying your range of tolerance of behavior so that you can thrive with the right people around you.
It seems so scary, but also empowering at the same time. Like, okay, yeah, I want to be surrounded by my people. It's going to be hard. It's going to be difficult, but also know that you're not the first one to go through something, you know? And so
Yeah.
again, like the community piece, and Amy, like, thank you for being so vulnerable with sharing, your journey. For moms that might be listening in and feeling overwhelmed with whatever that could look like for her right now, what is one thing that you would encourage her to do this week, or what mindset shift do you want to leave her with?
Hmm. Don't give up on yourself. Notice the gift in the challenge or the adversity, okay? No matter what you're going through. Every listener is going through something, right? And it could be something as dramatic as what we just mentioned. It could be just figuring out your next vacation. Like there's everybody is on different levels of life right now, but whatever the challenge is, it's there purposefully for you to grow. You can choose to have it overtake you, or you can choose to grow from it. And I don't know about you, but I think I'd much rather use it as a massive launching pad for like growth and skyrocket to the next level. And so if that's a little painful for a while, and it could be a lot of bit of painful, right? It could be really painful, then it is what it is. Like, it's going to create that resilience in you that is completely unstoppable.
Yeah, yeah. Like the idea that if you let it beat you down, then you can't ever move beyond that. And like that seems so scary to have to stay in that state forever versus
Yeah.
being able to grow and rise to something different that is going to be better for you.
Yeah.
Well, Amy, I just want to thank you so much for this conversation. It's incredibly grounding. Like we talk about roots, and I'm like, yes, the ground. Like I feel connected here. Um,
Good.
and really, the conversation wasn't really just about fixing yourself; it was about understanding yourself. That grace, sprinkle it into your life, and rebuilding from a place of truth. If you're listening in today and thinking this sounds like me, know this that you're not broken, and you're not behind, and you're not alone. We'll be sure to link Amy's book, Leading Motherhood, and all her coaching work in the show notes so you can connect with her. And if today's episode resonated, be sure to share it with a mom who's carrying a lot and could use permission to be a little gentler with herself. We'll see you next time on the Launch Family Podcast.